As a resident of Westchester County, you can have your a library card updated to include a sticker from us. So that's usually the way it works for alumni. But you also have rights as an alumnus. So as soon as we reopen, if you want to come in person, we'll work out whatever option works best for you.
Great, great. And when they log on to these databases, does it stay with the email, the student email, or can they give the personal email?
The databases are, I'm going to show you in a little bit. You use your MyWCC username and password, and that actually, once you graduate, that will go away. There are other libraries. The New York State Library has a great collection. FIT has a great collection. NYPL. I would recommend definitely, even as a resident of Westchester, you can also get an NYPL card, whether you work or live in New York, and they have probably more resources than our small college library has, especially for the arts. So first of all, there is a lovely guide called Art 125 Digital Imaging that was created by another librarian that I wanted to share with you. I don't have time today to go through everything that's in this guide, but I really recommend taking a look at it. It's chock full of information for working artists. Today, I was going to talk a little bit about the concept of copyright and fair use, and then take a look at some resources where you can find great images to use in your artwork, and the varying degrees of control that some of these have, like rights protection that some of the images might have. And really it takes you through, I mean, we could probably have 2 sessions covering the content of this guide, but it takes you through everything you want to know about copyright, getting permission to reuse images, applying to have copyright, understanding how your original artwork can be copyrighted, and then I guess some of these resources where you can find rights-free images for use in your artwork. And then the librarian who created this also has some tabs here on if you're building websites or digital art, keeping in mind accessibility rules. So the American Disabilities Act, making sure you're in compliance. And that has a lot to do with building metadata onto your images as you load them. And there's also some tips here for designing websites accessibly for persons with disabilities.
Right.
Okay, so I thought I'd just start with a tab on copyright. I don't know how much this class has talked about the definitions and some of the terms you hear thrown around. But copyright protects original creative expression once it's been fixed. So the year that something was created is very important for copyright and understanding copyright. And that could apply to sound recordings, printed images, artworks, books, writings, anything you can think of that's a creative work. The general rule, there are exceptions, but the general rule is that copyright items become in the public domain, meaning they can be used freely after 70 years after the death of the creator. And that's except in cases where maybe the creator's family took over the rights, or a museum might own an image. So those more fine art works that maybe are elite works that are owned by images or galleries, they're not going to follow that 70-year rule. But I looked up some works that became in the public, that entered the public domain. We talk about public domain, that refers to the creative works that are no longer governed by copyright, and you can use them, reuse them, mix them, mash them up, what you will. So some items that came into the public domain in 2020 are the Agatha Christie novels, which I think were illustrated, poems by Pablo Neruda, Buster Keaton films, you know, the old silent films with the comic films. and the Happy Birthday song and Rockabye Baby. So
Right.
if you're doing art where you want to refer back to some classic age, there's a lot more available to you if you can determine that it's older than 70 years of the author.
Jessica, is there a site that tells you the most recently released public domains?
Yes, in fact, I Googled copyright fair use 2020, and there's a bunch of articles that track this.
Okay.
And we, in the library, we actually did an exhibit on this in the fall. We posted images of books that were now in the public domain. So it's something that you can follow.
Great.
Yeah. So anything else I want to say?
I have a quick question about like copyright and fair use.
Sure.
So I know like a lot of times like websites can like copyright strike on behalf of like the creator. Like a lot of times like people will make like fan art or like some sort of like art for like a thing. Like people make drawings for Harry Potter, and it's like not commissioned or like authorized by Rowling herself. But like where does it fall? Like I know a lot of times like people can post it on social media, but like certain social media sites will copyright strike it. So like what falls under fair use and what falls under like copyright striking?
That I'm going to defer to maybe doing some research on the actual work itself that you want to use. I know things like Disney, Harry Potter are going to have very strict rules. And a lot of this also is up to the interpretation. People can be sued. In fact, this column here is a bunch of links to cases where, for instance, something that was similar, a Pokemon fan site was sued for publishing pictures of Pokemon. So you don't want to end up having to get an attorney and defending yourself. So doing your research and trying to determine if something's in the public domain, who owns the copyright, and then doing your due diligence and getting permission is going to be very important.
And I second that emotion. And it's really the fan art. The reason why a lot of it gets away is that most of the fan art that it's about has not been catching up. But when they do, they really are. The important thing is to exercise, like Jessica said, your intention of trying to seek the copyright permission. And that's important to look out where the licensing is. And that's another aspect about licensing. Disney will absolutely sue you. But these other not so famous artworks, they don't have the traffic to catch everyone. And it's also somewhat promotional. So it's a fine line, but like Jessica says, it's better to do the research and request who owns the estate and create the communications that you're making an effort.
That might not be a very positive answer, but that's
that's reality.
I mean, so I'm scanning through some of these headlines. It says, I found it on Twitter is not a copyright defense. All these creators of memes are really at risk. And I'm sure a great proportion of memes are violating copyright law. And then there's an article here about the generational divide and copyright mentality. So I think with all the new versions of media that we have to be cognizant of this until the laws get opened up a little bit more.
Right.
I was going to move on to the sequence here. It's shifting a little bit. It's about protecting your own work. And in terms of copyright, a lot of people, well, first of all, the difference, copyright refers to creative works. So if you invented something, a product or a piece to a telephone or something like that, that would be patent law. Copyright is creative work. And as a creator, you automatically have copyright over your creations. The point where, and this is according to Paul Overhauser, the point where copyright it might become in your benefit to investigate getting copyright over your works, is that it protects you. It's easier to defend yourself if someone were to steal your works. So that is pretty much a choice up to you. And if you feel like you're going to be publishing your stuff on the web, or you've somehow hooked into some trend, you might want to investigate registering your works. And there's some great resources here for how to do that through the U.S. Copyright Office. And there's also a source called Copyleft, which I think is a good source to look into if you wanted to put your stuff into the public domain. So it's a way of kind of protecting your work. You will give up some rights because you might say, okay, someone can share this, but give me attribution. It gives you a little bit more control. And that was what I was going to show you with a site called Creative Commons. It's a big open source website that you can participate in with your own works or also borrow from. Professor Criken, did I cover everything?
Yeah, no, that was excellent. I think the important context of why I wanted Jessica to speak with us is to help you to understand how many resources there are for you. And as you're getting older and more creative, you want to stay in that professional realm of protecting and understanding the rights and licensing, just like you asked Kristen about fan art. And I think that it's important to know that, you know, fan art is so popular. And so it's important to know that if you made any monetary aspects to it, that's when things are going to get even stickier.
Yes. And there's a couple instructional pages here to show you how, when you're creating digital art, how you can embed your information, or even, you know, warnings for others about how you would like the image used. So this is another tool at your disposal as you create art. It's recommended to embed some ownership into it. These slides show you how to do that in Photoshop.
Yeah, this is Bridge.
I believe so.
Yeah, it looks like, yeah, and Bridge does that really well, yes.
And then the other way to do that is to embed in the HTML code of your website. So you can embed, there's very detailed instructions on how to do that here. And if you work within the Creative Commons, if you decide to make your artwork available for sharing, giving you attribution, you can embed this code here so that people understand you're a participant in Creative Commons.
Good. That's very valuable because you can actually put that in your WordPress.
There's some guidance here on how to get permission. So if you determine that say you want to use that Harry Potter image, there are ways to borrow that content. You might need to pay some money, but there's guidance here on how to go about that. And then this is where I wanted to spend some time showing you some sites. This is the Creative Commons image search. Well, first I want to show you, okay, so there's a number of different, I'm sure you've come across open license sites where you can get free images, and sometimes it's frustrating just Googling for them, because I know I've done some advertising type design in several of my jobs, and I know, like, you end up clicking on something you like and then you realize it's got the watermark and you've got to pay for it and all that. So we're sharing here on this tab and the search for images tabs, some sites where you know they're openly available, open source. So first I wanted to show you Creative Commons, and this is that community of artists or photographers and anybody that creates works and decide they want to share it for general use. And you can set different levels of approval on the work. So the first thing you can do is use this icon for attribution. It means that you are making the image available for reuse. You just want to make sure that the people give you attribution. Share and share alike means that you can copy, distribute, modify the image into your own creation. Non-commercial means that yes, you want to share it, but you don't want it used for commercial purposes. And no derivatives means that you want to share it, but you don't want the new user to make any modifications to it. So I had Creative Commons open, and you can see Creative Commons now.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, I think I'm going to have to use this link. Okay, so this is the search page. And I looked up, let's just look up the Statue of Liberty. That's a really great
Image, yeah.
I was thinking, like, if I was an artist, maybe I wanted to create something about these coronavirus times and show like an empty cityscape or something like that.
I've seen a photograph of the Statue of Liberty with a mask on.
I saw that one too. That's in the Getty Images.
Right.
Okay. So these are mostly freely available images. So again, these little icons tell you what you can do with the image. The person means I can use this, but I have to give attribution to the original creator. And that little circle thing means I can modify it for my own use for my artwork. Here's a nice one. So this one, attribution, I would have to give credit to Bellboy. And usually you can just copy this and put that in your caption or, you know, small lettering somewhere on the page, and it gives you the HTML also to just embed the caption. It also looks like for this one, I can't use it for commercial purposes, but I can modify it into other creative work, which seems to contradict because what if you then wanted to sell the work?
Yeah.
So,
because you know that controversy case with Shepard on the Obama image, Shepard Fahey, I think.
oh yeah.
Right, where the Obama portrait, he used, I don't know if you know about that, the painting that he did for Hope on Obama.
Yeah.
It went, he got it, he made a painting from a photograph that was by the Associated Press.
Oh, so he got sued.
Yes. And if he had been truthful and said, oh yeah, I used his photograph, then they just would have negotiated a financial contract. But he unfortunately lied, and then that's where he got into trouble.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah.
So you're going to lose out a lot more if you end up losing the court case.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to share, once you do conduct the search and say you want to use it for commercial purposes, I could filter my results over here using the tabs. So they've got modify or adapt or use for commercial purposes. And then there's another indicator, which I think is newer, and it's CC0. That means no reservations, no reserved copyright. They waive all rights. So that would mean you could use it for commercial purposes, you could modify and adapt it, and you don't have to give attribution. So that's the highest category. But I thought this was also interesting. These are all the participants.
Wow, right.
So there's some stuff from the Cleveland Museum of Art. There are some pretty good collections in here.
Yeah. So it pulls from their database.
Yeah, they've decided, the artist has decided they want to participate in Creative Commons, so then it would automatically be tagged and cataloged in this interface. Also for artists, aspect ratio. So say you were doing collage and you wanted a wide image or a tall image. I thought that was pretty helpful as well.
Yeah.
And image size. So that's Creative Commons. So you can both use this as artists, and you can consider whether you want to share your artwork in here with others. And then there's some other sources for images. On this page, I would really bookmark this page. There's so much to look at. These are image search engines. So the one we just looked at, Creative Commons, that's an image search engine. There's also a way to use Google Images this way by going to the advanced image search. So again, I'm going to search for Statue of Liberty, and all the way down here we have usage rights. So we could do free to share and modify, free to use even commercially. They don't use the exact wording as Creative Commons.
So that's very interesting. So, you know, I always think, like, I see images in Google because I have them on my blog. I've never identified them as copyright or, you know, any Creative Commons attributes. So these are pictures that people have actually made a comment of what the attribute is.
In the metadata of the image?
In the metadata of the image.
I believe so, yeah.
So I wonder if Google, if no one, you know, a layperson doesn't know that metadata stuff. I wonder if the layperson doesn't say anything, they just put it up, you know what I'm saying? That they put it up for free.
They would have to register it with Creative Commons.
Right. So that's a great source find there on the Google one.
Yeah, I think it's great. And then some of these other ones, Pexels and Pixabay, these are new, but they're just, this is just a third-party website that's giving you Creative Commons and stock photography and that kind of thing. So if you're doing something more contemporary, I think stock photography helps you. And then Getty Images, which I actually asked my colleague if she minded me putting in this in here, because Getty is notorious for having very strict rights. I mean, these are professional AP photographers and artists who contribute to them, but they have, in response to so many people stealing their images, they've come up with this interface called Embed, and they will let you use these images for nonprofit, social media, or personal purposes. And when I looked up, I'm just thinking, because coronavirus is so new, and maybe if you were doing some art about that or some kind of social media about that, this is where you can get royalty-free images that are very new.
Wow, that's amazing.
The caveat is that if you want to use this, you have to use their embed code. Otherwise, you're going against their terms. So if you use the embed and it's for, I think they said journalistic, nonprofit, or if you're just if you or I, you just wanted to post something on social media or, you know, Instagram about experiences we're going through, you could use this because it's for personal use. Yes. As long as you use this standard code here. And what it does is it links the user back to Getty.
Now, this standard code would go into like a YouTube description or the metadata of the photo.
I think they've built this with social media in mind. So when you go to post like an Instagram, you want to use this code to bring the image in. You don't want to download the image and then upload it.
Ah, gotcha. Because I was thinking if it was in a video, you know, if you merge them in, then you would have to put the code maybe in the description.
Oh, yeah. I did see, not on this image, but some of these are also for purchase. So if you were to want to be using it like for a visual art project, or a lot of them get sold for like commercial television.
Right.
They've got pricing for that. Neither of these had it, but the one that I found earlier said, is this for, it was asking if it was for television, and it had a, oh, maybe it's when you, oh, comp, what's that? Oh, this is if you're say you were designing a website for a client, you could use these images as space holders as you're designing.
I see, right. And then if the client wants it, then the client pays for it.
Yeah.
Right.
So as far as like, if you were working in commercial web design, these prices aren't that bad for a commercial project.
Right. No, it keeps photographers employed.
Yeah.
Really. You know, it's interesting there's not a site like this for illustrators. You know, everything is photography.
Yeah, I think Getty was founded as a photographer for the AP photographers to
Right.
show.
Right.
For illustration, and again, over here on the right are freely accessible collections, and a lot of these are governmental, library, museum, those types of collections, and a lot of them are either in the public domain or freely available. So if you're keeping in mind that project of maybe I want to do an artwork on New York and the coronavirus, I was looking through here on what they had on New York. And they've got all these, you know, old photos, but also things like architectural photographs from the New York Public Library. Like maybe you could use that, modify this image and use it as a background or.
Right. Yeah, no, that's what I find to be the most useful. And their resolutions are very good.
Yeah, these were all scanned from the original, obviously the photographs or the, what do you call it? The old films.
Negatives.
Negatives, yes. I was thinking because I'm a librarian, I think the microfilm, because NYPL has spent a lot of time putting their print and microfilm collections on the web, which is so helpful to researchers. So I would recommend their collection highly. I'm in the Library of Congress, which is another really huge collection of digital images. And you'll find illustrations in here as well. And also sound recordings.
And Jessica, I wanted to ask you, where is it that the page to log into the databases to become?
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to show you now. Professor Crichton asked me to show you some of our research materials. If you go to the library homepage, right now we have this big red, and go to the database collections. I'm going to show you a recommended database for art studies. I'm going to click Browse by Discipline, and this will give you a list of all of our database collections. So these are proprietary. The library has to pay money for you to have access to this material. And I'm going to recommend a database called JSTOR. And most academic libraries have a JSTOR collection. It's a great interdisciplinary database. It will have all kinds of academic writings from the humanities, from history, gender studies, some psychology and kind of social sciences. But I like it also because it's integrated with another product called ArtStore, which is a large collection of digital images from worldwide museums. So if you wanted to research, say for inspiration, an artist that you really like, you'll get both that artist's images as well as articles about them. And I used Jean-Michel Basquiat as an example. I was thinking New York. So I love how I've got 909 results on him, and I love how they give you his artworks because they've got museum collections in here. These are digital works of art that probably most of anything that's owned by participating museums and galleries. So his major works are going to be here. And it's great because it gives you an idea. So not all of these are by Basquiat. Some of them are like in honor of him. Let's see. It tells you like where this artwork is located. So this looks like it's somewhere in Amsterdam. It tells you what it is, the date, and then also the rights. Who owns the rights to this? This one is just a generic, they don't really know, but some of them will tell you like whether the family owns the rights or a particular art collector or a museum. And if you were to want to use a print or reproduce this, you'd know then where to go. This one's owned by the Artist Rights Society in Paris.
This is great because it's very hard to find his work. And this is a great resource to see his body of work.
Yeah, definitely. And it's got really high resolution images. If I were to download this, I could zoom in and look at the brush strokes, and it's a really great tool. So then if I go back to the search results page, I've got a number of articles here. These are academic scholarly articles, and they're written mostly by art historians or cultural critics. This one's about his prints specifically. So these are publications that are really hard to find on the web. Usually you have to be a subscriber or go to a library to look at them. And that's available to you from the library as long as you're a student here as well.